Wow. So you started with the judo tournaments, and it sounds like that was your focus. When did you start focusing on the different types of karate competitively? Was that something that you got into when you were a little bit older?
Yeah, then that actually, I did judo and I stayed there for about 5 years, and that school closed down. And then my father knew that I loved it so much that he went around and found a school in Chinatown.
Hmm.
Like I live in Chicago, very like 10 minutes away from Chinatown at that time.
Okay.
You know, I could jump on a bus and be there in like 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So my dad found this kung fu school, and he went in and he talked to this Chinese guy, and it winds up being Grandmaster Wei Lun Choi, who later on in life, Dan Inosanto, when Bruce Lee's protege,
Hmm.
takes lessons from this guy. He's so good.
Oh wow. So that's a big blessing though, just to have someone like that in your backyard. So who did he train with then? Was he did he train over in China, or was he involved in some of the earlier dojos and schools getting opened up in America?
He actually came from Hong Kong,
Hmm.
and in Hong Kong, I think in 1971, he won the Open Challenge, which is basically what blood sport is modeled after.
Oh, okay. Wait, is that the one where Jean Claude had to? Oh, I know I'm gonna get him confused because I
Yeah,
always get all his movies confused. Is that the one where he like has to fight the old way, where he dips his hands in the wax and then it's got all the glass on it?
yeah, that's kind of like the Thai fighting version of it, but this
Yeah,
was
yeah.
like in Hong Kong. But yeah, that's I think that's the movie, where he had that fight where he steps in the ring and they kind of just fighting to death almost.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, that's the one where like he like makes friends with the one like redneck guy, and then like
Yeah,
the redneck guy gets hurt, and then it's all about avenging him. Yeah, that was a great one. And he's got like the
yeah.
two comic relief cops chasing after him, always getting lost in like the supermarkets and the stuff. Oh man, I love those films. I mean, it's just I don't know. There's just something to those like '80s, like '90s era action kung fu movies that like it just had a certain like attitude to it, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Too all action. It was all action. So people, you know, to the stunts in there were stunt work was a little harder to do because people were actually getting hurt
Right.
doing the stunts because there was no safety protocols like we have today. But yeah, it was that movie was cool.
So I guess let me ask you then, since you've actually been there and saw that, how accurate was that one in comparison to some of the tournaments that you see, in Hong Kong and overseas? Like, are they really in these like really seedy looking dungeon places, or are they more organized and I don't want to say capitalized the way they are over here, but are they in more
Yeah,
like arenas and that, particularly like
yeah.
back
Actually,
then?
yeah. Actually, they're a little more capitalized. They do have underground fighting, but usually that is more. Uh, when it looks seedy like that, those are usually related to brawler type of martial artists. People who don't
Hmm.
rely a little less on skill and more on brawl.
Right.
On muscle and their ability to take blows.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like that. How was that? I forget the name of the league. I'm sure you've heard of it. The bare knuckle boxing league they going over in
Yeah,
London. I think it's come around the United States, but I haven't had a chance to hit one up yet.
yeah, yeah. I can imagine those are very bloody. There's no rounds. You just fight till somebody drops.
Yeah. Well, actually, I don't know the craziest thing that I came across as far as like the competitive fighting. Have you seen the team on team mixed martial arts tournaments that they're doing in like Eastern Europe and Russia?
I've seen a couple. I've seen a couple bouts. Those are pretty good.
Those,
Those are brutal.
yeah, those
Yeah,
get
those guys are
brutal.
hardcore.
Particularly when I was watching one. I forget who the Russians were fighting. I don't know. It was some European country I couldn't even probably pronounce if I wanted to. But yeah, once they got to like 5-on-1, like they were just pounding those guys. I'm like, I'm surprised he didn't tap right away just to save himself the damage.
Yeah, but if you step in there, you're expected to last. Those guys who
Yeah.
already know what they're getting into, you know?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So let me ask you: when you were competing, did you ever do mixed martial arts, or did you like to keep it traditional with only competing in one certain style?
Well, I did a little point fighting. I did a little point fighting in Sanda, and um, in my opinion, it's not really. I don't. When they say mixed martial arts, I really don't understand that because
Hmm.
when I'm looking at it, when I'm looking at it, it doesn't look to me like it's mixed. It
Right.
looks like it's martial arts. And if you favor grappling, that doesn't really mean it's mixed because most traditional martial arts have grappling and takedowns and joint locking in the systems, in the older systems. So I think when people say mixed martial arts, they're mixing rules, and,
Okay.
and so that when you mix rules, it's more of a sport martial art.
Gotcha. So the
But when I'm
really
watching a lot of these guys, they are doing just tradition. They're not really doing a mixed martial art in my eye.
hmm
They're doing a martial art.
Well, I guess because like every individual competitor in that regard, I mean they'll all have their specialties. What they're particularly
Yeah,
good at, whether it's grappling, submission, kickboxing, whatever the case may be. And it's like I guess having guys compete against each other in different specialities, right? But I mean that's not necessarily someone mixing together different styles and kind of creating their own the way they kind of
right.
have it appear to be.
Yeah, yeah. That because already martial arts has been around for 2,000 years. So a lot of people who say they mix styles really don't are not creating like their own. You could create your own way you fight,
Right.
but you really don't create your own style because you borrow it from other styles. And there's chances are that there's hundreds of guys who've already done that. So
Hmm.
you're really not coming up with a unique style. Two, when I hear like the phrase like, "Oh, he's using a tie kick," I'm like, "Well, not that's not a tie kick because all the karate and kung fu guys and some of the harder like Tang Soo Do guys, the
Hmm.
Korean martial art guys, have that kick too." So it's
Right.
kind of
Right.
like I'm just kind of make the face like tie kick. What tie kick? That's a traditional martial art technique.
Right, right. Well, I mean, I don't know. I guess, a lot of these different cultures, like, they're going to develop their own flavor of different things, but, like, certain holds are certain holds and certain kicks are certain kicks. And,
Yeah,
the versatility of them, they're going to be used across the board.
right, right. And that's the whole thing is that's the flavor. The flavor just means like, oh, I'm going to use more elbows, or I'm going to use more kicks, or I'm going to throw more, or I'm going to use joint locks more. And that's just basically really not like mixing your martial art. That's just doing a different flavor.
Right.
Or what out and two, they should, because usually the flavor is what your body prefers. If you prefer throwing, naturally you have to have some kicking and punching in there. Otherwise, you'll take a pummel now. I mean, before it was very common for the grappler to win, but then all of a
Hmm.
sudden it was like the stand-up guys who preferred stand-up fighting adapted, and the grapplers stopped winning, and then you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, yeah,
everything
yeah.
it's a martial art. It changes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I don't know, and I don't follow it, necessarily how I should, but I got this app on my Fire Stick called Pluto, and what's great about it is they just have, I mean, it's just a 24-hour streaming app, but they have so many different channels on so many different types of competitive martial arts. Like you want, Taiwanese kickboxing, they got a channel just for that, and of course they're replaying tournaments and stuff from like the early 2000s, but just watching different styles and kind of being able to jump back and forth, it really helps you appreciate the versatility of it.
Yeah, that's pretty cool to have. That way, you're looking for something, you can pop it right on and go right to it.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. The one thing that I would add, if any Pluto executives are listening, the one thing that's missing on there is like traditional like wrestling. Like they have the professional wrestling channel, but I'd love to see some competitive college wrestling because you really don't even see that kind of stuff on ESPN anymore.
Yeah, those guys are hungry too. College wrestling, those guys are tough.
Yeah,
Yeah, whenever
conditioned.
you watch it or yeah, Olympic wrestling or things like that, those guys are hardcore.